All right, let's move to the NFC North, Sean, if you could timestamp this, if you don't
I
mind.
got him.
All right, cool. And let's start with the Bears. And no TJ Edwards. He is back practicing, but he did not play in the game. He was held out. DeMarco Jackson and Devin Bush started at linebacker. Jack Sanborn was the number 3 linebacker. Didn't see him to the second drive. They didn't use him on the first drive. But that makes Sanborn number 4 overall behind Edwards and Bush and Jackson. It certainly appears that if Edwards were going to miss time, it would be Jackson taking his place. As a side note, for really deep leagues, Nefi Sewell and Ruben Hippolyte both left the game with injuries. Let's move to the safety spot where Cam Lewis and Dylan Theneman started at safety. Of course, Kobe Bryant is out for the year. Now, Xavier Woods, who they recently signed, who Sean might have even mentioned that he thought that was a possibility that he would get signed by the Bears, and sure enough, he did. Guess what happened to Xavier Woods during the game?
He didn't get hurt, did he?
He sure did, Sean. He suffered a groin injury. So he came in with the second team, suffered a groin injury. I was hoping that Woods might leapfrog Lewis and be a starter next to Theneman. As we've talked about in previous shows, Dennis Allen's safeties are not great for our IDP rosters. So, we're down on Theneman and Lewis in general. But in the deepest of leagues, maybe Woods, but now don't even see that happening. At defensive end, Montez Sweat didn't play, leaving things for Austin Booker and Theo Odumegwu. During some of the practices leading up to the game, Sweat and Booker were on the edge, and Theo was being moved to the inside in some cases. Now, things got a little bit even more complicated for the Bears' rotation, at least from an IDP's perspective. And Sean, we're going to get your opinion here. They brought in Marcus Davenport. They signed him on Monday. He has experience with Dennis Allen from his days with the Saints. Of course, that bumps Shamar Turner down, Daniel Hardy down, etc. But right now, what is your order, 1, 2, 3, 4 of those edges, and where are you drawing the line and which ones you're going to pick or not pick, Sean?
Sweat's still your top guy, and then I like the high upside of Booker. Odumegwu is still, he was a high price free agent last year, so I think him and Booker are actually probably on par. And Marcus Davenport does nothing for me. Dude's made of glass. He's only going to get a sack or 2 before he gets hurt, if that. If he makes it to week 2, I'll be shocked. How about that?
I was about to ask you what's your over-under in terms of the number of games that Davenport's going to play. So you're going with 2. Wow.
If he's not on IR by week 2, I'll be shocked.
All right, I'll give him to week.
I don't see him as a threat. I really don't. He's depth here.
I agree that he's depth as well. We're aligned on that. Now, interestingly enough, with all the injuries, including Cam Lewis having to now play safety, Malik Muhammad, the rookie out of Texas, played the slot cornerback role. He has minimal experience there, and he clearly struggled during the game. Unfortunately, there's still no timeline for Kyler Gordon to return, who we'd really like to see. That role, while the safeties suck for IDP and Dennis Allen's system, the slot corner is wonderful. We just don't know if there's going to be someone skilled enough in that role that we can take advantage of.
Yeah, ideally we would get Woods back healthy, playing deep. Theneman kind of in between deep and box, and then Lewis would be the guy to be that nickel that would give us all those points. But with the injuries they're having here, it's starting to get messy to the point where I'm probably avoiding everybody now as far as that secondary goes.
For the Bears, exactly. Okay, moving on to the Vikings here. Josh Metellus and Theo Jackson surprisingly was starting at safety. I was actually expecting it to be Jay Ward, but it was Theo Jackson. Byron Murphy and Isaiah Rodgers were your starting cornerbacks. Cashman and Eric Wilson were your linebackers. Jalen Redmond, Levi Drake Rodriguez, and Tyrion Ingram Dawkins were the starting linemen. So not Caleb Banks, who apparently did not perform very well. Not Dominique Orange, Big Citrus, as they like to call him. Neither one of those two were in the starting lineup. Now, I was watching very carefully Jamal Adams because I found a few more reports going into the game about how the Vikings were using him in the third safety role, moving him down to a third linebacker role. Really exciting stuff. So I was charting every play. So he went in actually on the first series on second down. He went in, Van Ginkel came out. And they used him in a variety of ways. They used him deep. He went outside one time. He was in the box 3 times, etc. And then he got hurt. So I was bummed. The question I have for you, Sean, is do you think Jay Ward, particularly after that humongous sack he put on Jackson Dart, he knocked him into next year, I believe.
Oh, yeah, that was quite the hit.
Yeah. Do you think Ward takes over that Adams slot or Adams spot and what they were using him for? Or do you think Adams was just this unique character or has this unique capability, and as a result, he's gone, and that flexibility they had with him is going to be gone, and no one can really fill that role?
Yeah, I think that's the point. There is it was just a special role for him in particular with his skill set. And when you look at him out there, as a safety, I'm like, wow, that guy looks really big. He looks like a linebacker. He really stood out. So, but with that blitz for Ward and that hit, I think he's definitely earned a spot to at least eat some of that role. And I imagine it'll be him and Metellus that kind of flip back and forth now instead of Adams and Metellus as far as playing in the box or deep or whatever. I think Theo Jackson's your confirmed deep guy regardless, and I do think Jay Ward is an interesting name to keep an eye on.
Yeah, we're not picking him yet, but we're keeping an eye on him. Correct. All right, let's move to the Packers. Zaire Franklin and Edgerrin Cooper only played one series. What was interesting is there was a lot of blitzing going on. And in fact, there was a double blitz where both Franklin and Cooper went in. Franklin got the sack, got credit for the sack, which was just exciting to see. Sean, Are you expecting a revival of both of these guys this year because they both let us down last year?
Yeah, for sure. And Zaire was in a totally different defense last year, and I think that was the problem, plus the injuries he had right before the season kicked off. So overcoming those two things, Zaire Franklin's shooting up my board, and I was really happy to see Edgerrin Cooper play the same amount of snaps. In other words, he wasn't coming off playing, 75% of the snaps or something like that. So that gives me hope that he's not buried and gone now. Of course, it was only one series, so definitely got to see more here. But I am excited for this defense, and they pretty much have to run blitzes because they don't have much of a pass rush now.
Yeah, Lucas Van Ness and Baron Sorrell aren't going to set the world on fire from a pass rush perspective, as we talked about last week. And they might get a little bit pushed from the inside between Wyatt and Hargrave, but not enough. So I think they will have to blitz a lot. I think we're going to be seeing some slot corner blitzes. I think we're going to be seeing some linebacker blitzes. So I think that could be exciting for some of those roles. Now, I have a public service announcement to not do what Keyshawn Nixon did. If you want to stay in favor with your boss, or in this case, your coaching staff, you probably don't want to go into an interview and talking about the fact that they are punishing me and putting me on the second team. Sean, that's probably not the smartest thing in the world for Keyshawn Nixon to do.
Yeah, I believe that's called career suicide. That's not good at all, especially in this sport. Yeah, not a good look. In fact, that's definitely going to put him down to a reserve role.
Yeah. So Keyshawn Nixon and Brandon Cecay started the game. So after all the Packers' other starters came out after the first series, those two started the game at cornerback, actually played a second series as well. Now, Carrington Valentine was dealing with a hamstring injury. St. Juste came in afterwards. But this whole Nixon discussion and punishment, there's been discussion from the beat writers watching practices that we've seen more St. Juste and Cecay starting at cornerback. So last year's starting cornerbacks of Nixon and Valentine may be second string here as we move forward.
And Dix is still being drafted as the guy from the last few years, and that's ill-advised, to say the least.
Yeah, so we've got a few of these, like Adebo, like Nixon, that that's why we always say we're trying to draft this year's best team, not last year's best team, folks, and that's why you want to stay tuned to us. Come and watch our shows regularly, and we will keep you informed. So stay away from Keyshawn Nixon. Now, the only interesting thing is Javon Bullard, who now is no longer in a walking boot, as a side note, because of that foot injury, and could play if they needed him to, but at least he's out of the boot, which is great news. The people that they put in slot in his place, Oladipo, and I believe it was Jalen Simpson. They struggled in the slot. The one thing where Nixon could come into play later in the year, if he is moved to the second string as we expect this based on what we're seeing, if Bullard gets hurt, Nixon does have experience in the slot. If he loses the outside cornerback job and Bullard gets hurt, maybe Nixon slides back in that slot role. Something to watch, but right now we're staying away from Nixon. And the Packers are supposed to run a lot of, quote, 3 safety looks, and I'm including the slot as a third safety in this case with Bullard. And Bullard, if he's on the field for 90% of the snaps, could be a surprise this year at the safety position, Sean.
Yeah, definitely a guy I picked up in about 3 best ball leagues there at the end of the draft. Completely overlooked guy. So, yeah, potential for some big weeks there.
All right, let's move to the Lions next, Sean, where most of the, I'll call them normal starters, didn't play right now. Of course, the reason I say normal is because there was one safety, and we'll come back to that in a little bit, who I expect to start the year, who did play. But at linebacker, I'm really going to be interested in your take on what's going on there. So Joe Bacci and Devin White started. Trevor Nowosky played the third linebacker role. He played that Derek Barnes kind of Sam role. Bacci played the Jack Campbell role. Devin White played the Anzalone role from last year. Now today, Jimmy Roeder, who most people thought was going to be on injured reserve to start the year and miss at least the first 4 games, he's the rookie they drafted out of Michigan this year. He came out and said he's a week or so away from playing. Given all this movement at the linebacker position, how do you see numbers 1 through 5 stacking up for the Lions? Who's going to be your first 3 starters and a couple of backups out of all those folks?
Yeah, so I think Campbell and Barnes have their roles from last year. Pretty much the same difference. Barnes will be that third guy. Gets a little edge work. I see Nowosky as his backup. I see him as probably the 4. Probably. Just seeing how much he was on the field with Devin White this past game. I think Devin White's going to be your second starter next to Campbell in that Anzalone role. And Rodriguez will be behind him.
I don't know if Malcolm Rodriguez is going to make the team. If Roeder ends up having to be active, there's a strong possibility that Rodriguez doesn't even make the team. And I'm with you at this point in time. I'm thinking that Campbell and Devin White are going to end up as the starters now, which very different position from where I was a few weeks ago. But as things continue to play out, our opinions and mine can change. And right now, that is a change. And I think it will be Campbell and Devin White starting.
I think a lot of people are starting to realize that, especially after how he played. And, as far as run game, Devin White looked great. And with him not being the play caller, he's allowed to run around and do all the Devin White stuff. Fantastic role for him. He doesn't need to be the main guy.
Yeah, and in some of the earlier practices, particularly when Rodriguez was out, Barnes was playing his normal Sam, strong side linebacker role, the number 3 linebacker, whatever you want to call it. But then he moved to the number 2 linebacker, and Rodriguez was coming off. With Devin White there now, I think Barnes stays in the same type of role he had last year, basically.
I do too. Now that they have a viable option next to Campbell, they can stay on the field all 3 downs. Yeah.
Now, going to the safety position, which I said we're going to come back to, the starters were Christian Izien, Thomas Harper, and Chuck Clark. With Izien starting in the slot, let me be clear, with Harper and Clark at safety, okay? I was surprised Clark played because I do expect that the starting safeties right now for the Lions are going to be Avonte Maddox, who I think is a great number 3 defensive back to target for early in the year while Branch and Joseph are out. I think Chuck Clark is going to play that deep Kirby Joseph role, as a side note. But Izien started in the slot, but when they went to the second team, Izien actually moved into the safety position, and we saw a lot more of the rookie Keith Abney playing. Roger McCreary played 39 snaps, mostly in the second half. The word is that he sucked. I think that's the technical term for it.
I heard that as well.
Yes. So I think we're going to have a situation where McCreary might not even make the team. And I still think Izien is going to start the year in the slot because Abney is the rookie, and it's not like he was a first, second round rookie. I believe it was fifth round, if I remember correctly. And I think we're going to have Maddox and Clark starting as the safeties. Sean, any disagreements with those takes there?
Yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you. They had said earlier in the offseason that Clark was going to be Kirby Joseph and Izzy was going to be Brian Branch. So the only thing I'm unsure of is how Vontae Maddox, if he's going to have a full-time role or if it's going to be Izzy and back and forth. I have questions there, but
So you're not as bullish on Maddox as I am right now.
I'm a little more concerned for Maddox. But I'm curious to see how these next game or two, if he does get to play, how that's going to work out. But those were the two I was focused on more than Maddox.
And Dan Campbell did say that he expects to play many starters in this upcoming game, so hopefully that'll tell us a little something here as we go to the second preseason games.